Now, 2019, meanwhile, the Minister of Trade and Industry, Ebrahim Patel, says that Africa needs to boost its production of vehicles from the current 1 million to 5 million a year. The minister said this when he spoke at the Intra-Africa Trade Fair on Tuesday. And is the target of 5 million per year possible? What needs to be done to reach that target? Well, to find out, we're now joined by Nissan Africa's Government and Strategic Relations Director, Wonga Mesatywa. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having us.
All right, so the automotive segment of the Inter-Africa Trade Fair happened on Tuesday, I believe, with the show. How did that go?
The auto show happened on Tuesday and today. It was a two-day program, and there were many themes that were discussed. Chiefly being policy issues that impact on our stated desire to increase the production of vehicles in Africa from the current 1 million to 5 million. Of course, many other themes that were discussed included aspects like vehicle financing, access to finance for people to buy cars, etc., etc. So far, so good.
So what's been holding back motorization on the continent? You talk about increasing capacity from 1 million to 5 million. That's a huge jump, which means that there's been a massive potential that's not been utilized. What's been holding us back?
If you look at similar markets, like India, and I think this is what the minister was talking about. If you look at India, if you look at the economic measurements and the economic fundamentals of India in terms of GDP, household incomes, the number of people migrating into the middle class, you would have expected that markets like Africa, which are similar to India, would be performing in the same way. India currently does more than 4 million vehicles. We do 1 million. The differences between us and India are the fact that India, of course, has got a proper auto policy that is government-driven, auto policy that talks to, amongst others, standardization of policy. It is one country. It talks to the banning of second-hand vehicles into the market. So in Africa, we currently have got a myriad of jurisdictions, each not necessarily doing the same thing as the next one. So what we need to do is to get harmonization of policy where trade between the countries is actually encouraged, where we make sure that second-hand vehicles, which are crucial, which are necessary in the growth of the auto sector, are generated from within. People buy new cars, those cars become old, and then the second-hand market is generated, and you've got that circular economy. So these are the items that we need to be dealing with. Access to finance. Yeah. We take it for granted in South Africa that you go to the bank, you apply for a loan, you get a loan, and this facility is not necessarily there in all of the markets that we're talking to. And these are the pillars and the themes that we are trying to fix as Nissan and the industry and the government stakeholders and the banks, everybody who takes a part in the ecosystem.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're comparing India to the continent, population-wise perhaps similar, but I guess the challenge we have on the continent, 54, 55 countries, French, English, Arabic, Portuguese, Some people drive on the left-hand side, some people drive on the right-hand side. And so harmonization does become quite a challenge, doesn't it? I guess that's really one of the big issues.
Most certainly, Peter. But if you consider the fact that the governments of Africa have actually agreed to form a free trade area, the governments of Africa have realized that we need to boost trade within Africa. The will is there. The Africa Free Trade Area is now in place. It took time for the governments to agree. The governments have agreed, and now it is up to us to put the wheels into the framework, to put the meat into the framework, to make intra-Africa trade possible and grow the economies of this wonderful continent. The will is there, and where there's a will, there is a way.
All right, let's talk a little bit about this second-hand car market and these grey cars, particularly those ones coming from Asia. And some of those are your vehicles, I'm sure. How are you managing that? Because you're trying to grow a local market, but people are importing your cars.
Of course, what happens in this ecosystem, Peter, is that cars are made for specific markets. The conditions in Africa, road conditions, for an example, would not necessarily be the same as road conditions in Japan. Cars made for Japan would therefore not be suitable to operate in Africa. What we are saying is that we are not talking about substitution. We are talking about growing the market in Africa and to make vehicles, to design vehicles for Africa, to manufacture vehicles in Africa for African conditions. And our principals are fully on board. We, Nissan, are invested in Egypt. We have a manufacturing facility in Egypt. We have a manufacturing facility in Roslyn in South Africa. We have a manufacturing facility in Nigeria. We have a manufacturing facility in Ghana. We are committed to make sure that we build cars in Africa for Africans.
All right, so when we look at Europe, I think 2030 they're looking at phasing out petrol cars, combustion engines. You're busy expanding on the continent. What kind of cars will you be delivering?
Talking about Nissan, and I'm sure this is true for all vehicles, there is a product plan. And the product plan takes into account the realities of the markets in which we operate. We are a global organization. We have got business in Africa. We have got business in South America. We have got business in Australasia. We have got business in the Americas. So we are a global organization, and global organizations tend to try and fit the way they do business to the ecosystem in which they operate. We are fully aware of the fact that some of the markets are slightly more advanced than Africans in terms of adoption of new technologies. Africa will follow. It might not be at the same time as Europe. And of course, what you are saying is that if we continue to build vehicles here and sell vehicles in Africa, what is happening in Europe is not necessarily going to impact us as it would if we were relying on the Europeans only for trade.
All right, so one of the things that's often talked about is public-private partnerships. An international global organization such as yours, what are you doing in that space to grow our continent?
Well, I mentioned Ghana, I mentioned Nigeria, and those are two examples of us setting up manufacturing assembly operations with local partners. In Ghana, our operation is in partnership with Japan Motors. In Nigeria, we are in partnership with Stallion Motors. These are examples of us working with the locals in order to make sure that the jurisdictions, the markets in which we operate actually feel the benefits of our investment. And our investment is not only in rands and cents, our investment is in technology, bringing in technologies to these markets. Our investment is in terms of skills development, etc. And of course, Peter, there is no way that this auto sector is going to grow if the public, if the governments are not deliberate in putting and agreeing policies that make it possible for the auto sector to go forward.
I remember, I think it was last year, there was a test that was done on vehicles, and it seems as if the safety standards of cars that arrive in Africa are not at the same levels as the ones in other markets. Is that true? And if that's the case, why is it the case?
There is no global company worth its salt. There is no global company worth its salt that is serious about its business is going to do anything as silly as that. As I have said, all of us are global players. All of us have got pride in what we do. We spend billions in research and development. Just the other day, it was mentioned that one of our competitors spends 10 billion dollars in R&D in Japan. Now, why would we spend so much money if we are going to do things as silly as you are suggesting?
But you are aware then of this test that happened 2019, Nissan NP300 hardbody sold in Africa compared to a Nissan Navara NP300, and the tests revealed that the African hardbody was not as safe as the one manufactured in Europe. And these are Nissan vehicles.
Yes. Again, you must remember that each market has got standards. And I repeat, the vehicles that we build tick all the boxes of the markets in which we sell.
Even if they're lower standards, is that what you're saying?
Now, this is exactly the crux of the matter. This is one of the issues that is being discussed in the policy conference, the harmonization of standards. If the standards are harmonized, if everybody subscribes to the same standards, everybody knows that a vehicle that is built in South Africa will walk into the market in Ghana. A vehicle that is built in Kenya is easily sellable in the Nigeria market. Harmonization of standards is something that we are discussing today in terms of fuel quality, in terms of homologation, in terms of the rules of engagement. That is one of the biggest areas of discussion in terms of what we are talking about today in this conference.
Is the infrastructure being built at a fast enough pace to accommodate 4 million more cars?
If you go to some of the African countries today, you would, if for instance, you hadn't been to country A in 3 years, the next time you go there, you would be amazed at what has happened in terms of the governments of those markets putting in investment into the infrastructure. As I said earlier, governments in Africa have taken a deliberate decision to boost industrialization. Infrastructure is absolute base necessity for industrialization. You need roads, you need airports, you need ports, because those are enablers in the trade ecosystem that we're talking about. The will is there. Do yourself a favor, go to Ivory Coast, go to Mozambique. If you haven't been there for 5 or 6 years, what you will see today will amaze you.
All right, so you think that we're not going to be creating traffic situations with our new Nissan cars across the continent?
No, certainly not.
Yeah.
But also remember, Peter, that we currently sell almost 5 million vehicles, but the majority of which are grey products.
Yeah.
So the number of 5 million is not necessarily coming from somewhere. Those are the numbers that are currently being done, but the majority of them are grey products, which are not beneficial for the economies of Africa.
All right, and that's where we're going to have to leave it. Mr. Mesatywa, thank you so much indeed for joining us on the program.
Thanks, Peter.